Hi everyone, it's Eliana and I have a couple of cards to share with you today. I am going to be using the Picket Fence Peacock Tail Stencil. I am starting off with some Brutus Monroe masking paper, and this masking paper is cut down to A2 size, so that is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. I used my Pixie spray from Therm to adhere my stencil to my cardstock. I really do love this spray. This spray allows you to not have to worry about taping things down to your stencil. It peels off without leaving any kind of a residue. So what I'm doing now is I'm just using a little bit of Twisted Citron to do a portion of the stencil. I'm creating a mask, so I'm just cutting out the peacock body. Once I have that all cut out, I'm going to add the mask to a piece of Gina K layering paper. I only pulled off a little portion of the release paper just so that I could get it started. It's a little bit easier to work with if you only pull off a little bit at a time. It lets you adjust a small section at a time. Once I have that all pulled up, I'm going to start doing some ink blending on the body of the peacock. I am using Mermaid Lagoon with my Picket Fence blending brushes. I am a big fan of these brushes. It just makes picking up color and laying it down so easy for me. I don't get hardly any brush marks, and it usually blends out if I do get them. So I put down a really thick layer of that. I just wanted it to be super intense. And now I'm peeling up my mask. You could save that for later. Now I'm taking that stencil and I'm placing it back over. It's still sticky from the original application of the Pixie spray. And it'll stay on there until you wash it off with some warm water. Once I get it all lined up, I'm just going to press it down with my fingers. I did not press it down very well on one small section, and you'll see where I paid the price for that later. But for now, I'm just going to add some of the glitter paste, and I am using Caribbean from BoBunny. It's just one that I had in my stash. I'm using a rather large palette knife, and I'm starting on the outside of the peacock. And I'm going to work my way in. It'll just be easier for me to blend the colors. I do want to make a correction though. I did use Gina K heavy cardstock just because the dampness of the glitter paste will warp your cardstock just because it's going to be wet. So I did use thicker. On the other card I'm going to show you, that is on the layering. Now I'm going to move on to my second color. My second color is the Gina K Glitz Glitter Gel, and that is in Turquoise C. There is a difference in the paste. This one's a little bit more liquidy. The BoBunny one I've used before, and so it was a little bit dry, but this one was very smooth and it was a lot easier to spread. So I did put some on my craft mat just because I did not want to contaminate my jar with any of the BoBunny Caribbean. So I'm just spreading it just around the edges of the Caribbean gel or glitter paste. I didn't seem to pick up any of that Caribbean color, and so I just scooped everything back and put it back into my jar. I cleaned off my palette knife because you don't want to allow any of that gel to dry. And now I'm going to be using another BoBunny color, and it is Wasabi. And this one was rather liquidy because it still had the plastic covering. I do notice that on the BoBunny ones, if you leave the little plastic liner on part of it, it does help to keep it from drying out as quickly. I did have quite a few that I had to toss because they just dried out. Now that I have all my colors on there, I'm going to take this big spatula from Therm. It's very flexible, and so it's easy to use on my stencil just to get a smooth, even distribution of all that glitter paste. Once I have that done, I'm just going to carefully pull it up. And you want to be careful when that last little piece, it always wants to bounce back. Now, this little part right here is where I did not press down the stencil, so I got a little bit that went underneath the edges, and so I'm just using a craft knife to scrape it away. It's so much easier to scrape it away while it's wet than when it's dry, because you won't even tell that you had a mistake. And now that it's all completely dry, you could see that the peacock body just seems a little kind of not like the rest of the card. And so I just decided to take some stickles from my stash. This is the Stardust, and I'm just going to use that to cover the body. I do have some clear glitter gel, but I just thought it would be easier just to use the stickles, and I might as well use it and get it out of my stash because I probably won't use it anymore now that we have these pastes. So I just wanted to go ahead and use what I had. So I'm just smoothing everything out with my small palette knife, and then I'm going to set this aside to dry. I'm going to make a similar card. This is just a different variation. I have my stencil once again on my Gina K layering paper. I'm just using a smaller brush from Picket Fence Life-Changing Brushes, and I'm just using the Twisted Citron. Once I get the Twisted Citron on, I'm going to move on to the Mermaid Lagoon, and I'm going to start on the outer edges just so that I could use the peacock feathers to blend both colors together. So I'm just going around the edges. I'm trying to pay attention to the pattern so that I could do the same amount of color on both sides. I'm not trying to be perfect or anything because one side ends up having more color than the other, but I figured it's not going to matter because it's all going to get blended. And now I'm using a different brush to put on the peacock feathers. Using these brushes and the Gina K paper makes ink blending so much easier. Everything just glides and everything is just so smooth. It just makes me so very happy. So I go back and forth just so that I can get an even blend of colors so you can get that fade. And once I get all of that done, I'm just going to take a microfiber towel and I'm just going to wipe my stencil down. I did spray this with a spray that I made with the liquid pixie dust from Ink on 3, and this panel here I was a little too close, and so I got some big splotches, and so I ended up doing the spray, but I was on the second one and I did it a little further back. If you get too close, you'll get big droplets, so be sure to scoot it back. Now for my sentiment, I'm taking a piece of vellum. I just cut the full sheet in half, and I prepped it with my anti-static tool, and now I'm just going to be using a sentiment from Picket Fence, Let's Shake Our Tail Feathers. So I'm starting off by just stamping multiples of the sentiment because I did make multiples of this card, and I'm just moving my vellum up in the MISTI. I am adding some Wow Black Glint embossing powder, and I heat set that with my heat gun. Once I have that all done, I'm just going to take my cut-a-line and I'm going to just trim each one of these sentiments. I'm not sure which one I'm going to use, so I just decided, well, I'm just going to do them all. I wanted to do that really quickly. I'm just lining up one of the lines on my ruler with the lowest part of the descending letters of the sentiment, and at first I was going to do each one individually, but that would be a lot of flipping back and forth, so I just decided to do one for now, and then I'm just going to do them all together and then just choose the ones that I wanted to use. So I'm just going to line up the sentiment again with that same line, and I'm just going to run my craft knife across it a couple of times. Now you want to keep in mind that you don't want to push hard with your blade. If you push hard with your blade, you're going to end up getting your blade kind of wedged in your craft mat. You're going to wear away your craft mat a little bit sooner. And if you just use pencil pressure, like you're writing with the pencil with your cut-a-line, it will go so much smoother. Just relax and pull that blade down, and you'll see that you can just whip through these like I am right now. It's a lot easier for me to do them all in a row because I have that line and that same reference point each time. So it makes it really easy for me to go through and just trim all of these up at one time. And it just took me about a minute or so to do all of these. And then what I did was I just went through them and found the ones that had embossed very well. Sometimes you get some of that embossing powder inside of the round letters, and so I just went through and picked out the best ones. So you could see I went through all of these rather quickly. And I did use the longer ruler. I know a lot of people don't think that they need the longer ruler, but sometimes it's just easier. So I did use the lines on my cut-a-line to line up the sentiment, and I'm just putting some adhesive on the back. I didn't want to use any adhesive on the front because you could see it through the vellum. And now I'm going to add it onto this key lime Gina K cardstock. For the other card, I did spray an entire sheet of the key lime cardstock with the liquid pixie dust from Ink on 3. That way I had glimmer paper. And now I'm just adding that card panel that had all of the glitter gel. I did use a lot of foam tape on the back of it just so that it would stabilize it and make it a little bit smoother. And here are my different cards. I did spray them all with the liquid pixie dust from Ink on 3. And I do wish that you could see how beautiful that glitter paste panel is. It just doesn't come across on video as beautiful as it is in person. Thanks so much for watching, and I hope you've enjoyed this video. Don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't done so. Hope you have a great day. Bye.